Welcome, friends. Here we are. So we've been with this stuff for 2 days. We've been poking at this from a bunch of different angles and a bunch of different sort of ways of playing with it, exploring it. So what's going on with you? What does that feel like? Any questions? Any issues coming up? Any observations? Yeah.
So, envisioning exiting here, you're not here at meals or chatting with us a couple times a day. Back to regular life. No peaks of reality, like peeking through, and then you start to get desperate. It's like, oh, well, maybe if I try harder, maybe if I just it seems like such a paradox that either comes or it doesn't. You can't make it. I don't know. It's like what to do when you sort of go totally dry.
Sure.
There's nothing there, and yet you're still in. There's no avoiding this. When you started and you had a taste.
It's Pandora's box.
It sucks sometimes.
Once you've opened it, there's no closing it. It's Humpty Dumpty. You're not going to put them back together. The trick is that in actuality, your experience is the entry point. Your experience is the magic carpet, so it's always available, and it's basically up to you, or let's say your wherewithal, or your luck, or your cussedness, or whatever, to find tricks or times or situations of engagement with this, of flirting with this, of playing with this for yourself, and finding your own way with it. Because it's just a matter of contact, It's like we were doing the meditation this morning. It's really nothing special. It's not like, it's just feel your experience. Instead of focusing on who's present and what's going on and what the gossip is, just feel the textural presence of experience. And bang, you're off and running. You just touch that, and you're off and running. Even if it's just a little off and a little running for a second, still in all, it's cumulative. This stuff is very powerful, so that you get a little taste of it, and that taste sort of sits in the background and ferments. And it's kind of like rust, you get a little rust in your car, and before long the whole car's just going to be a big brown pile in your yard. It might take years, but sooner or later it's going to happen. The rust doesn't go backwards.
There seems like times where it's not remotely accessible, where it's just, normal suffering life, nothing.
Sure, it can seem like that, but it never is actually that, and it won't always seamlessly forever seem like that. And when it doesn't, that's when you take advantage of it. I call this noticing, and the trick of noticing is to, whenever you have an opportunity, whenever it happens, it can be anything. It can be like hearing an unexpected horn honking as a car driving by, or hearing a bird sing outside the window, or seeing a pretty sunset, or just looking at a cloud and you're going, wow. Just in any one of those moments, it's just like, wait a minute, there's something amazing here. And it's not like clinging to it or owning it or deconstructing it or, importing it. Just that touch, just that feel of, there's more here, there's mystery, there's profundity. And just that touch is like depositing money in the bank. And sooner or later it accumulates interest. And this stuff is absolutely cumulative. It's not like you get a little bit and then you lose it. It's not like that. Every little touch you have with this, you own it forever. It goes into you and builds. So the trick is just touch it when you can, when you find it. It can be, every minute or every 5 minutes or every day or every week or every month or every year. But sooner or later you're going to, wow, yeah, right, yeah. And then just feel that. Be with it as long as it is available. And then when it begins to go away and you begin to drift off, as you will, just let it go. Don't try to cling to it. Because clinging to it turns it into something it isn't. Turns it into something you can cling to. So just a good attitude is sort of a playful attitude. Sort of just trip on it when it's there. Wow, yeah, this is amazing. And then oh, it's going. I'm drifting off into my insanity. And just okay, cool, let it go. And sooner or later it will come again. And it might be, in a second or a minute or so on and so forth. But sooner or later it will. And when it does, same thing. That's the cycle. The cycle is when it shows up, drink it. Just drink it. Just wow. And then when you begin to drift off, and don't try to cling to it. And you may even try to cling to it. That's cool too. But then that'll make it drift off sooner. And when it does, or you drift off, or however you want to put it, just let go. It's like, okay, it's going to come again sometime. And then you go about your business, and you know how to do that because it's what you've been doing all your life, right? It may suck in some ways, but still in all, we're very familiar with it, right? And then sooner or later, again, that's the cycle. So you just this touching of, wow, yeah, there's specialness here. This is amazing. There's something fundamentally amazing here, and it's actually for real, and it's right here, and it's showing up right now, and I'm with it, and I'm it. I'm there too. You couldn't see it if you weren't there. So all of a sudden you're touching this transcendence, this amazing quality. And that's all. That's all it needs. And it's it can seem like just a little thing, but it's incredibly powerful. This stuff is for real. It's very powerful and it's very cumulative. And it literally will transform you. It will remake you sort of from the inside out. Just these little momentary contacts.
Peter, no matter how far you get, sometimes you just feel like shit. That's it.
Sure.
Then you just don't want to even try. You're just like, I feel like shit.
Sure.
Just go with it.
Yeah. Then you do.
You don't feel like shit.
Exactly. Sure. But the point is,
there's got to be times when you feel like shit.
yeah, the point I was trying to make to address what you're talking about more specifically, which is also ties into what you're talking about, is don't use this stuff as an antidote. It's like, I feel like shit, let me do some spirituality to try to remedy the feeling like shit. Because that ruins it, that kills it. It kills it dead. The magic is magic because it's magic, not because it fixes anything. Right? It's not because it makes everything better. It doesn't make anything better. It makes everything inconceivably weird. It makes everything irrelevant, ultimately, but it doesn't make it better. So if you approach this stuff like a remedy, you kill it. You turn it into a formula. You turn it into, another goal orientation, and you suck the life out of it.
That's what most religion and spirituality has been.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why most people
it's
go to
exactly
churches.
like, oh, I feel bad, let me go to confession or let me say a rosary or something. Like, good luck with that one. That's going to do a lot of good. This is real. It's not, it's not just our usual ego gamesmanship. And so you have to let it be what it is. When it's there, let it be what it is. And it doesn't fix your life. It's wholly outside your life. And your life where you're happy and sad and things suck and you succeed and you fail, that's all cool. That's your game. In your case, it's the Bruce game, and you've been playing it all your life, so there you go. You know how to do it somewhat, right? But this is outside that game. This is something else. This is like, ultimately it's what you really are, but it's not related to fixing the game. It's all very paradoxical, because ultimately when you realize this stuff, it does fix the game by making you not give a shit. But if you approach it as an antidote to fix the game, you kill it. And it loses its vitality. So by all means, in terms of fixing things when things suck and so on, use coping skills like you already know how to do. Or there's others available, everyone has their tricks, when things are bad, you do whatever you do, you take a nap, or you have a drink, or you go to a meeting, or you You know, whatever it is, it's your trick for doing things, right? You get busy, you know, you watch some TV. I don't know, you know, everyone has their own shtick, right? And that's what you do to solve problems. That's what you do, you know, to deal with the crappy stuff that comes up. Just you deal with it the way you have been dealing with it. But this stuff is something else. This is about transforming everything, not about fixing problems. It's not about feeling good. It's about feeling God. Which happens to feel pretty good. Right, okay, let's get out of here. Which happens to feel good, but that's not the point.
I used to feel good all the time.
That's right. Nancy?
So, you said you have fun with this, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was walking in the dining room and I was in some thought, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a black and white experience, like reading a newspaper or something. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the texture of it, and I walked out in the outside, and that was enough to wake me up. And
Yeah.
the old pattern would have been, oh darn, I was asleep again. And so I saw that, which doesn't really happen that much anymore. I mean, it's there, but I don't feel that anymore so much. But I thought I'd have some fun with the situation, so I said, okay, let me see if I can stuff myself back into that black and white.
Yeah.
And I tried to stuff it back, and it wouldn't go.
No, it doesn't
I
fit.
knew it wouldn't go, but it's really fun to try, because it shows you how ridiculous it is to be mad that you weren't there, and now you are, and it's like it just happens.
Yeah.
And it proves it.
Yeah, I mean, not seeing this is basically being lost in insanity, and seeing it is finding sanity, and you can't take the sanity and put it into the insanity.
You can't go
They're
back
kind of
in.
mutually exclusive.
No, but you would never go back.
You can definitely go crazy again, but you can't take the sanity with you to the insanity, or vice versa. You can characterize it the other way around.
But it's really amusing to try.
You got a funny sense of humor.
It's not important. No, I'm just saying I used to be always happy and so delightful, and whoever asks me how are you, wonderful, great, you know, something like. I say this sincerely, but now in these days I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I was super happy or unhappy, or I just don't know.
Yeah, this is something we haven't really talked about this retreat. Also, when you begin to be with this stuff and it begins to become more present in your life, all sorts of things can happen. It can actually cause a lot of problems. It can stir up a lot of shit. It can really, you know, be perturbing in many ways, emotionally or mentally or even circumstantially. Weird coincidences can start showing up, and I mean, it's just all kinds of strange things can happen that is part and parcel or a symptom of the fact that something's happening. You know, it's for real. But it's not strictly, oh, you go to this stuff and all of a sudden it's all sweetness and light, and oh boy, happy, happy, joy, joy. It's not like that necessarily. It might be, maybe, but not necessarily. Sometimes when you start engaging with this stuff seriously, I mean, you can have major life upsets, you can have, you know, life-threatening illness, you can have, you know, emotional turmoil. I mean, all kinds of things can happen, which is the process of this energy, this incredible, inconceivable energy system recalibrating itself as it sort of adjusts. I mean, picture like a chick breaking out of an egg or something. You know, it's like not necessarily a smooth. It might be kind of a catastrophic type event, and also potentially long drawn out and so on.
But I find that the way I'm dealing with life is more spontaneous. Like, give you an instance. That I'm accountant. Every year, from 3 months, at the beginning of the year, it's super busy.
Yeah, sure.
I'll have so much workload and the deadlines.
Right. Sure.
Everybody's stressed out during those period of time, and so did I. And every year is like that, so stressful. And this year, there's no stress, and there's just things just happening.
Yeah.
They keep happening, and sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe I should feel something, this the pressure, So, but it's just
I should be a little neurotic here.
yeah, but the things just keep happening, and I always met the deadline, and I don't have to really rush anything or feel pressure or anything. But the deadline I always met,
Yeah.
It's kind of.
Yeah, when one begins to integrate with this stuff more fully, all sorts of wonderful modes of hyper-efficiency start to show up. The ability to really improvise, the ability to be spontaneous, the ability to multitask, and doing all sorts of effective engagement without a lot of process. So instead of needing to think about things or worry about things or plan things, you can just sort of do things, random access very rapidly and hence very efficiently, which is kind of a nice side effect.
Right, and you feel that the energy,
Yeah.
you start on, okay, this one, I'm starting, it's just not that thinking, it's just the internal kind of urge,
Sure.
starting doing the process and starting doing that project, things like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, when I am feeling like shit, that's like on the spiritual path in the first place. He said,
Sure.
Don't do this for an antidote, but I'm sort of inclined to, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The second I'm going to start looking for something
Sure.
interesting to look at.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, but this is very typical, Of course, we're driven to despair because our life sucks and there's got to be a better way and so on, and we start scrambling around and stumble on some, get some intuitional hit that, wow, maybe there's something in this stuff, so let me play with this. And typically that happens. But then, again, and so you enter into it expecting that or looking for something like that. But what you find, in a way, is that, ultimately, but it's also not that. It's not. See if I can come up with a good example. Nothing pops to mind. But it's a radical, complete, utter transformation of your entire reality from the ground up, which inclusively happens to solve the problem that brought you to it. But it's not a matter of addressing that problem. It completely transcends that problem and renders it wholly irrelevant, essentially. And the problem is, pragmatically, if you approach this stuff in terms of remedying your problems, you're making it small. You're trying to reduce it to the same game structure that makes it seem to have a problem in the first place. And it's wholly outside that system. It's entirely outside that system. So the only way to be with it is to be with it as it is, to go to it, to be with it its way. If you try to bring it to you within your life as an antidote, you don't bring it. You bring a fantasy of it, a facsimile.
Right.
And so then you think you're dealing with it while you're just completely mired in your insanity.
That's very tricky.
It is very tricky. It's subtle. But the trick is to, recognize actuality. And the hallmark of actuality is you can't tell what it is. You can't pin it down. Anything that seems to be specifically this or that, it seems specifically something you can get a handle on, it's a sure sign that it's a fantasy. Whereas anything that has a wow factor, it's like, whoa! It's not simply this or that, it's sort of both and, then that's a sign that it's actual, which makes it powerful. Just by being with it as it is. You're all of a sudden, right then, you're outside of your game. You're outside of the whole realm in which your problems exist. And you solve the problems not by solving them, but by just departing from them.
Yeah. I know that feels like it.
Yeah, sure, of course you do.
When I feel shitty, I go through an inner process that's basically, it's kind of psycho-emotional frequency, ancestral past life combo.
Sure.
And basically, usually at the core somewhere is like I'll start with is, and sometimes I can find it right away and sometimes not. Is there something here that I'm trying not to feel, that I'm avoiding, as an experience that wants to happen in this body that some other part of this system wants to avoid. And if I can find that right away and go there, then the whole thing, whatever is felt gets felt. And if it gets felt deeply, then that takes me into actuality. But I'm not doing it to get to actuality. I'm doing it because this is a good method for dealing with feeling shitty.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's more complex, and like the past life has to be discovered and liberated and all of that. But usually, if something like that happens, then again some feeling comes up that I didn't even know I had, and it's like all of a sudden I'm in wrenching tears out of, because something got lifted, and that happens. And then the okayness with that just out into actuality, like the light goes on. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I don't do it to get to actuality, but that pretty much happens as a result of getting more real in just a basic sort of psycho-emotional way. So it's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
so there's no separation between, the personal trying to fix the problem and what is.
There's lots and lots of tricks, and everyone has to find their own. Because you can't, this stuff it's not formulaic. Reality is not formulaic. Experience is not formulaic. Even though there's all these formulas that are claimed to be applicable, you still have to own them experientially, or think you are, in order to be engaged with anything. But the important point about what I would like to emphasize and try to present is that actuality is always present, and it's always right here. It's always available. You are already always engaged with it. It's just a matter of noticing that that's the case. The irrational is always present, and the irrational you is always with that in its own mode. And to the extent that we are locked into a rational orientation or a rational self-image and a rational narrative of who we are and where we are and what's going on, we may not be aware of that. But in actual fact, we are there too. So it's kind of, Alice through the looking glass thing, And one discovers tricks, and the more one discovers these tricks, and the more one searches for this, the easier it becomes to do. This is all the stuff. This stuff is essentially basically just psychology. The conscious mind tries to get a handle on everything. It wants to own everything. It wants to say what everything is. It wants to incorporate it into its story and its narrative, and be able to to spit out all sorts of details about what it is and how it's doing it and all that. But it's all a pretense because it never actually knows anything. But it won't acknowledge that it doesn't know anything. And so we're kind of schizophrenically in two worlds. We are in the world of our conscious mind, and we are very familiar with our self-image and our narrative and our history and who we are and what we're doing. And at the same time, the irrational us, what you typically unconscious us, is just in the sea of, well, you can't even qualify. You can't talk about it rationally because it's too weird. But we're in both worlds, and typically we don't let ourselves know we're in both worlds. People engaged in psychotherapy and extreme experiences and all that get some bleed through. You start getting dream images and these various things going on. You start experimenting with psychological techniques. You kind of get hits on all this stuff. But this noticing is just a very gentle way of accessing this, of contacting the irrational actuality. Just because it's always present. Because the conscious frame of reference is very, what's the word? It has lots of cracks in it. It has lots of holes. It's not actually internally consistent. It's like a movie set where it's not really, it's only a front. It's only a sham. It doesn't really cover everything. So there's glaring holes in our world from the rational point of view, which the rational mind is expert at not noticing. The rational mind is expert at skipping over it. No, don't look there. Look over here. But all of these areas are actually always present and actually noticeable and completely contactable in our ordinary experience, even our conscious experience. And the sign of them is anything that doesn't seem to be anything in particular, anything that's kind of irrelevant. So if you go looking for, just look over into a corner of a room where it's dim and you can't really see what's there and there's nothing interesting there anyway, and you wouldn't even look over there. If that's over there, you just aren't interested, and you come back to where the action is. But that's a sign that, wait a minute, my conscious mind has no investment whatsoever in that aspect of experience. So the veneer, the conscious veneer at that point is much thinner. And so by being with what's there, all of a sudden, let's say the boundary or the gateway between the two worlds is much thinner there, and you can actually feel the openness very easily. And there's always vast areas within any conscious field of experience that you're not particularly interested in, that are boring. When you're outside, you look at the pretty clouds and you see the flowers and you hear the birds, but there's a little patch of sky over there that you just couldn't give a shit about. And that's where the action is. That's, anything that's totally uninteresting and seems to be nothing is where the magic is. From the conscious point of view. Like our meditations, you're just sitting there for an hour. How stupid is that? How boring is that? You're doing absolutely nothing. Nothing particular is changing around you. But that becomes the doorway to subtlety. Because there's nothing for the conscious mind to really latch onto. It tries to anyway. It spins out stuff and it's telling itself stories and you're thinking about this and you're reacting to things and all that. But that just sort of it peters out after a while because there's no stimulation. It's just boring, It's nothing. It's just, we're sitting, feeling experience. Well, I'm always feeling experience, Where's the entertainment? Where's the TV? Where's a book to read? Where's something to do? But no, you're not doing anything. You're just sitting. But because of that, because of the boredom and the lack of interest of the conscious mind, all of a sudden the unconscious can come out because it's not being drowned out by the bellowing, the heavy-handed, Nazi commandeering of the conscious mind, telling, saying what everything is and just completely railroading you, right? And so that's the opportunity. Contact this. So, I mean, this is one very good trick for noticing, which you can, if you remember, you can play with any time, because in any situation, there's always something in your experience that's uninteresting. And that is your doorway. What doesn't attract your attention, what isn't part of a narrative, what is just a background scenery and totally irrelevant, that's where you can find vitality. That's where you can get out of jail. Because the movie set is very thin there. So, that's one trick that's very good for noticing. It's always available.
And myself, Peter, I think that I'm constantly astounded at how everything's new always, and that the trick that worked yesterday doesn't work today.
Absolutely.
And that's keeps my relationship with reality kind of vital, because I have to keep coming up with new things.
Yeah.
That it's a kind of there's no quick fix. It's sort of I guess I've settled into the idea that it's something for the long run, that it's not going away. And so I don't have an expectation that it will be, just great feeling all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes dollying back helps, because I get too close, and then I need to just sort of take a break. Like you say, look at the thing that is, look at television or, whatever.
Sure.
Do something mundane. I do think that there seems to be a certain static reality that I come up against again and again, but I haven't quite figured out what that's about. But it's maybe something that I just have to. When I do encounter that, I notice that if I go into it, it isn't what I think it is.
Right.
And
yeah.
That, that maybe it's reality itself that I'm encountering, but I'm interpreting it in a way that is not accurate, or it doesn't trouble me so much as it used to when I come up against that, dullness or inflexibility.
Yeah, there's so many tricks, and the trick is to, find your own, find tricks that you can use and you can remember to use. The trick of noticing absolute surprising newness is a good one. For example, notice how in any situation you've never experienced this before. You've never experienced any single detail of everything you're experiencing right now. It's entirely new. That's always the case, and it's startling to the conscious mind can't really handle that. It tries to, no, we're sitting in this room having a conversation just like we were yesterday, it's just the same, even though it's completely, utterly not the same in every single detail, And so that's for example, a good trick, just notice, I have never seen these exact colors and these exact shapes before. I've never heard these exact sounds before. I've never seen this exact lighting before. It's completely new, completely surprising, unexpected. You can look at the unexpectedness of your actual experience in any instant. Exactly what you're experiencing in any instant is you could not have expected to be experiencing that. You could not have expected exactly where your eyes happen to settle. You could not have expected exactly what sounds you happen to be hearing at the moment. You could not have expected exactly what thoughts you happen to think at the moment. This is radically and blatantly true. That the absolute unpredictability of every single detail, not just some things or a lot of things or generally, but every single fucking detail of your experience is completely unpredictable and completely new in every instant, continually, ongoingly, and nothing ever repeats itself exactly. You know, I mean, right away, right there, you're outside of the conscious mind. You know, you just look at that fact, and it's like I'm in a place where I've never been before. You know, and what's happening have never happened to me before. And the people I'm dealing with are behaving in ways they have never behaved before. And everything is completely new, you know, just blatantly, nakedly new. And that's always the case. Every instant that's the case. Exactly the case. And obviously the case. It's not even a subtle thing. It's really obvious. Of course, it's contrary to the way the conscious mind wants to spin it, because it wants to turn it into a narrative, and narratives are based upon repetition. You know, oh, it's the 7 o'clock meeting again, and we had one last night, and we're going to have one tomorrow, and we're going to be droning on and on and on about all this stuff, and it's just the same old thing. God, how boring. In spite of the fact that it's entirely new, entirely unexpected, entirely unpredictable, entirely surprising. I mean, what could be more interesting, right? But the conscious mind, like, just turns that around and turns it into just this dull, sludge, horrible stuff, you know? It sucks the life out of it.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking is for me, I always have this fear. I'm going to go into a new situation and it's going to be boring. Or like, what are people going to find anything to say? Or, what, you know, what's going to happen, you know? And of course, it's never the same, and I'm very good at entertaining myself, and you know, I could like stare up at the ceiling or whatever, and people have questions, but there, you know, it's a big part of my ego construct is that things are going to be boring.
Sure.
And how am I going to tolerate it?
Sure. Everyone has this. We all have these kinds of, you know, pet expectations, and it's, you know, it always is about repetition of, oh, this is going to be this again, and what's going to happen, and what am I going to do, and but it's all just a catastrophizing narrative fantasy, which completely ignores the spontaneity of the moment, completely taking care of every detail of itself. It completely ignores that completely obvious fact. I mean, it's staggering how the conscious mind can do this. It can completely ignore there's something so obvious, you know. But all these little things like that are just, again, little tricks that you can notice, you know. Just remember the mantra, you know, surprising or spontaneous or something like that. And it's just, and look around and say, have I ever been in this moment, in this situation before? Have I ever experienced exactly this situation before? Have I ever experienced this conversation before? You know, and the answer will always be no. And not just slightly no, but completely and utterly no in every single specific. Right? And right away, you're in authenticity, you're in actuality. Because it's actuality that's like that, not some conceptual version of it. It can't be conceived because it can't be expected, and you can't get a handle on what's happening because it's already gone, and it's already something new happening. In the instant, it's already new. There's no duration where it has time to get boring, because as soon as it appears, it's already something else. It's already gone. You know, and this is all, you know, it's just, you know, it's just completely obvious. It's just physics. I mean, it's just the obvious, factual, objective way things are. You know, but it's also this inconceivably amazing reality that happens to be the case here. You know.
So that's going to work with everything, right? Not just boredom. I mean, like,
Sure.
what's boredom?
Sure.
Fear states or anger.
Of course.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
It's all just all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so
Well, look at it. Has anything ever persisted? And even if it seems to persist, it's actually changing and morphing instant by instant. Even if you classify it as, oh, I'm feeling shitty, and I've been feeling shitty for an hour, but it's a slightly different shitty every instant. It's an ever morphing. That's right. It is. It's surprising, and it's always surprising.
any of those emotions
Yeah.
that maybe you don't want, or even the ones
Anything.
you do like, because then you sort of cling to that crap, and then that's another little shitty thing to
Sure. But all this gamesmanship of of it's shitty or it's good or it's fun or it's anything, is all based upon thinking you can have a handle on things. So you're already off in fantasy land. When you look at the spontaneity, right away you can't possibly have a handle on it. So all of that qualifying is gone. I mean, flavors are here, but they're so incoherent, you can't resolve it into good or bad. As soon as you've resolved it into a mood or something, you're already in a subliminal or maybe not so subliminal narrative. Oh, here I am in this situation again. Oh, really, God, what a pain. I wish I was somewhere else. And so as soon as that goes on, that's what provokes the mood. The actual instant surprise of the situation, you can't provoke the mood. It's too weird. It's just like, what is it? What is it now? It's literally always, too fast, too mercurial, too amazing to get a handle on. And so you're always just sort of, No, it's true. It really is true. I mean, that's what realization looks like. You're always completely in the unexpected moment. A realized person can sit in the doctor's office for 5 hours and not read anything and be happy as a pig in shit. You just sort of sit there. Because every instant it's like fun. It's entertaining. It's interesting. It's just all this wild, stuff coming up and unexpected thoughts and unexpected observations and unexpected memories and unexpected this and that. It's very entertaining. We turn it into boredom by a narrative of, oh my God, this is the same, it's dragging on and on, there's nothing to do, I wish I was over such and such, why can't I be there, and I have to be here, and where's the damn doctor, it's a litany, and none of which is true. It's just not true. It's completely ignoring the fact of what's actually happening. I mean, actuality is just so astounding. It's so unexpected. It's always unexpected. You can't expect what any instant's going to look like. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Because you will always be surprised. And the conscious mind will say, yeah, but it's almost the same. But almost the same is a euphemism for entirely different.
Dr. Staff must love you. The only person that isn't all pissed off by the
Oh, they ignore me. They focus on the people that hit on their stories.
Right.
They love to have someone to get pissed off about.
Right.
One of the side effects of noticing.
When I walk into an unfamiliar place, I immediately notice that all the civilians and all those things shows up. It's so vibrant.
Yeah.
But when I walk into the place and with the people in it and with people I know, immediately the conceptual thinking take over.
Sure.
And those people I know, the story and the history and I like, or all this kind of scanning thing going on. So how to take advantage of seeing the radiance and see through this as a miracle of the happening, the engagement or whatever, instead of conceptual.
The trick is notice that they're not mutually exclusive.
They're not what?
They're not mutually exclusive. It's not either or. It's not like you're working with your mind or you're working with spontaneity. They coexist. So even when again, I was talking about finding areas of your experience which are uninteresting. That means finding areas of your experience which are not part of the mind's working, the mind's narrative, the mind's soap opera.
Right.
And so, it's never either or. It's easy to. I mean, and it's very common in spirituality to think it's an either or. The mind is the enemy. I have to stop my thought, and then I'll be able to have samadhi or something. It's a total absurdity because they're not mutually exclusive. The functioning of conscious mind and the functioning of thought and the functioning of all this judgment and analysis and addiction to soap opera and so on and so forth exists within a field of not that. They coexist. Like a star exists in the night sky. It's not like the star is the opposite of the night sky. They exist in each other. They're each other's environment. So, when you walk into an environment and all of a sudden your mind's hitting on aspects of it, people you know or something of that story, again, there's aspects in the environment which are also just not part of that story. It just happened to be there. Just an accident. Just like something that happens to be sitting on a table that you don't give a shit about, or whatever, or a painting on the wall or something. It's just not part of the story. It's just just part of the cast of thousands. It just happens to be there, but it's not part of the plot. And that exists in actuality. It exists outside of the conscious mind's machination. So it exists in kind of a gray area where you can think about it if you want to. You can direct your conscious processing towards it, but you're simultaneously already with it as a energy presence, because it's there, but you're not thinking of it. You're not fixated on it. And so, this is kind of subtle in a way, but it's also very obvious when you begin to notice it. Look around this situation, and your conscious mind focuses on me because I'm the speaker and I'm in the front and center, and then maybe focusing on you, you're feeling yourself there, and you're feeling about your own, I don't know, whatever, right? However it happens to be. Feeling your own participation, or you're thinking about people around you, or whatever. But then, this particular portion of the picture, it's like, who gives a shit? So all of a sudden that makes that really valuable. Because that's a doorway to actuality. That's a doorway to noticing. You can feel the music that's playing. Listen to the sound that light is making. There's all sorts of ways to euphemize it, but you're basically tuning, you're sort of tuning in between the cracks of the conscious narrative to that. And in that, you're outside of the mind's machinations, even if the mind's machinations is ongoing and right here. It's not either or, they coexist. So, it's not like you're either all stuck in your neuroses or you're completely free of it. It's never like that. It always coexists.
Peter.
And it's a complete mistake to suppose that the spiritual path consists of utterly rejecting and leaving behind your personality and the human self. It's not like that at all. You discover that your human self and your personality and your history and all the normal stuff we're familiar with exist in a context that's vastly more and other than itself, but it's not. There's no dichotomy there. It's like the earth and the sky. They coexist. It's not like it's either the earth or the sky, and you can't have a sky without an earth. You have the earth, and the earth is in the sky, and the sky's there, and the earth's there. So likewise, your personality is here, and your neuroses and the scars of your accidents of your upbringing and so on is here, but they exist in a context of this amazing actuality which sprouted them and which nourishes them and which exists them like the biosphere nourishes a plant that happens to be in it. So again, it's not an either or.
Oh, I was going to say, furthermore, I think it's not just that the idea of thoughts have become like the enemy, but there's an assumption that these thoughts are familiar and that there are thoughts, as opposed to seeing the thoughts
Right.
the same way you would walk into any room and say, well, I've never been here before.
Sure.
And if it's a so-called familiar room, the thoughts aren't any more the same than they were another day.
Exactly.
There's a superimposition onto them that they are ours and that
Right.
they're the same.
Right, exactly.
And so if you can see how they're as different as anything else you're seeing in the waiting room, as well as the waiting room itself, suddenly the thoughts in the waiting room are like the lamp or like anything else that's happening in the room.
Right.
They're not yours and they're not the same as you've ever had,
Right.
period.
Yeah. The world of dullness is constructed of spontaneity. This is fascinating. In fact, I was thinking about this. I thought of a metaphor that I'd never used, which is very, very relevant to this very point, and I'll introduce it tonight. A little fanfare. So this metaphor is a pretty good one. I find it.
Now that you said it.
I know, right? I know, right? It's going to go.
You're building it up, come on.
So, no, but I think it's really good. I was thinking about it. And if you look at any game, like let's take Monopoly. You're all familiar with Monopoly, of course, right? Let's take Monopoly. If you look at any game, so how do you play? What's Monopoly? What's a Monopoly set consist of? It consists of the box. It consists of the rules printed inside the box. It consists of the houses and the hotels, the board, the dice,
Money.
paper money also.
The pieces that symbolize
And that all of that is how you play Monopoly. That's what the game is made of. Okay, but every single thing, everything, nothing whatsoever that you use to play the game comes from in the game. It all comes from outside. Right? The game of Monopoly doesn't make the money that you use to play Monopoly. The game of Monopoly doesn't make the houses and the hotels. They're made in a factory somewhere that has nothing to do with Monopoly. The box that it's in is not made by the game. It all comes from completely outside the game, and yet when you're playing the game, you're completely ignoring the fact that everything you're using to play the game has nothing to do with the game. And then you play the game with all these things which are completely non-game, and you completely ignore the fact that that's the case, and you're in the world of the game, even though every single portion of that you're using to play the game has nothing to do with it. It's just an accidental accumulation. And likewise, if you look at the game of our mentality and our modeling and our creation of these worldviews and normalcies and self-images and so on, every single element that we build this out of has nothing to do with that. It comes from outside of that. Thought does not come from personality. Thought is this amazing transcendental energy, and yet, the mind takes this transcendental energy and uses it as game pieces to create its, the horror of its normalcy and its neuroses. But even though what it's using has nothing to do with that, it comes from outside, it's transcendental. These bodies, of these incredible dynamic adjusting energies, transcendental energy systems, and we turn them into, the dullness of our body and the things we hate about it and the problems of our health and the this and the that, as part of our narrative and our story and what we battle with, and yet every single, what it's made of, where it comes from, is completely outside that and has nothing to do with that. And every element, every single thing that shows up as an element that we use as a place marker, or as we use as an object within our normalcy, comes from outside of that normalcy. Just like every piece in the Monopoly comes from outside Monopoly.
Bravo! Encore! Encore!
I mean, again, this shows the very slippery coexistence of these sort of two worlds, let's call it, the world, the finite world of the rational mind and the amazing open-ended, multidimensional world of actuality. They're actually the same world. It's not like one's here and the other's over there, and when this one's here, that one is gone, and when that one's here, this one's gone. It's not like that at all. They're actually the same thing. They interpenetrate. So, so all of this is so, but the mind approaches it as an either-or. It's like, oh, I'm stuck in my shit. How do I get out of it? Get to this amazing thing over there, And so it's thinking, I'm here. I got to get there, which is a total misunderstanding. It's not like that at all.
You don't need to know where the Monopoly game was made in order to enjoy a game of Monopoly.
Exactly. It's irrelevant.
And
It's entirely
play
irrelevant.
it is totally different.
Right. And that's the way the conscious mind is. The conscious mind doesn't need to know that it's transcendental because it's busy being non-transcendental. It's busy pretending to be, this is my sucky life and I've got to, fight my way through the mire or whatever, right?
And your muggle mode doesn't interfere with your transcendental mode.
Exactly. And the muggle mode is made of the transcendental mode. Every element that constructs it, every element that it is actually constructed of is transcendental.
humans invent games like
Mhm.
Monopoly because we obviously
Yeah.
enjoy solving problems, and if we
Yeah.
don't have them in our real lives, then we make them up.
Well, it illustrates
So we
it
are
illustrates
making
the,
them
it
up all
illustrates the
time.
dominant mode of an interpretive framework, a game structure, which is essentially the way the mind works. The mind, creates a game structure, and then the spiritual challenge is to see this. The spiritual challenge is to see the game structure that we've created of the normalcy of our life, and to discover that it's arbitrary. It's not actually objectively true. Just like Monopoly isn't objectively true. It's a game that one is able to play, and it becomes an urgent and even an important game because of the investment in identifying it as such.
You know, it reminds me of when our dog, even the game rules and the game itself is an abstraction that's non-existent. Because I remember when our girls were little, and they're identical twins, they would never play the games with their friends according to the rules, because of course most games have a winner and a loser. And they'd say, no, 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 we don't play that way. Nobody loses, nobody wins. We just play the game. And so, of course, if anybody looked like they were behind, they would just assist them to move forward. So it was like they never played to win or lose. They just played to play. And the same thing is true of the concept, the whole notion of the game of Monopoly. It's an abstraction. It's not what we think it is either. Not only are there parts and pieces from outside itself, but all of it is imaginary.
Right. This illustrates very well what the way our mind works, and the challenge of our stuckness and our smallness and our, the limitation of our world. It's all imaginary. It's completely imaginary. And all that imagination exists in a context that is entirely other than it. And that being the case, it's noticeable that that's the case.
So first night Stan said something about shitty noticing. So
I did?
yeah, he said something about shitty noticing. So I've often had the experience of noticing, but feeling like a failure because it just didn't seem like I noticed very much.
Right.
It just didn't seem like much came in. And now I'm thinking, listening to you more, maybe, like today you're talking about all those levels. Maybe I'm just seeing how one level right then. Maybe next time I look, I'll see something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's intellectualizing it too much, but and the other thing is the slipperiness of it, where
Right.
seeing it and then I don't see anymore, and I experience it as a failure where it's really just probably slipping.
Yeah.
Just the slipperiness of it.
Yeah. Any noticing is good noticing.
Yeah.
And the part of you that assesses it is not noticing. So the assessment is already not noticing, and is irrelevant, because noticing transcends the whole realm in which assessment can happen. So you can by all means assess every time you notice. You can assess it as being horrible, but it's irrelevant because the assessment is not the noticing. It's the noticing that's powerful, not your conscious reaction to it.
I don't want to be doing an assessment, it just kind of comes out.
No, of course, but that's the nature.
I'm going through this kind of process to see if I can let is, I know when I first heard about noticing, I had this idea, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to see deeper and deeper and deeper right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to open up. And I heard these words, and that just never seems to happen. And so after a while, I sort of gave up on that. But so there's this lingering sense of failure, which I didn't even know I had until like the first meditation that came up, and I was, oh my gosh, there's all this sense of failure, which I never knew I had, but it's taunting me all this time.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. But the conscious mind is like that. It is so powerfully addicted to self-image and self-assessment and self-deprecation and faulting yourself for all the things that you do wrong and badly, and you want to do them better and you never do, and you're stuck and you're shitty and you're screwed, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's its stock and trade. It just spits this stuff out, and that's its idea of a good time. Right? Thanks a lot. And again, the idea is not to fix that. The idea is just to undercut it, just bypass it altogether. And when you're noticing that is there at all, it's just completely irrelevant. So, our psychological stance of negativity and self-loathing and all that, which most people have various degrees of, just as part of their neurotic personality, is irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. It sucks, and it would be nice if it wasn't there, maybe, or whatever. But this is not about that. This is about completely bypassing that. And yet, in the long run, bypassing that will, takes the juice out of that whole mode as being particularly relevant or entrapping or omnipresent by degrees. But that its point isn't to solve that. Its point is to reveal that as a very small event in a vastness that you also have. It's as if you had lived in a mansion and one room in the mansion was a mess and was filthy, but there's like 100 other rooms that are glorious and spectacular. So the fact that one room's a mess, who cares, right? And our the failings and inadequacies of our personality is kind of like that. The object is not to clean up the room necessarily. The object is to discover that you don't need to clean up the room because you've got a whole lot of other amazing rooms to hang out in. And so the fact that that room is a mess is like, you can't win them all. Yeah.
The interesting thing is, though, that the feelings of loathing and fear, or whatever negative feelings come up here intensely. They don't come up when you're out in Costco shopping.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Why is that?
It's a matter of distraction. It's a matter of attention.
So
the conscious mind asserts itself most when it feels the most threatened, and when you're not when your attention isn't distracted by activity, there's a potential for noticing. There's a potential for transcendence. So the conscious mind, it says, no, pay attention here. Let's get some good juicy neuroses front and center to distract you away from the possibility. It's it seems to have like a built-in defense mechanism, and its major weapon is emotional entanglement.
Peter Starkey has a question. Can you take any questions from you?
From Peter Starkey, I'll always take a question.
Okay. Here's the question. Can you give an example of the cracks or holes in the conscious experience that one might notice?
Well, sure. What we were just talking about is you find some area that's present within your experiential field that is not particularly being paid attention to, or being held as being important, or as being this or that, or as being a part of the narrative. Typically, for example, a typical conscious mind in a situation like this might be, not strictly hypothetical, might say, okay, I'm in a meeting here. What's the content of the meeting? What do I think about it? What's being said? Do I like it? Do I not like it? What do the people around me think about it? Do they like me? Do I like them? Am I happy being here? Where else could I be? The conscious mind sort of starts spinning off all sorts of stuff like that, and it's not liable to pay much attention to the particular shade of green in the second panel on that window up there. So all of a sudden, it's there, but it's not part of the story. It's not part of the narrative. There's no juice there. It's just it's just part of the set dressing that no one gave particular attention to. And so the veneer there is very thin. It's not, the conscious mind has no investment in it. So all of a sudden it's, so if the attention is with it, the attention sort of diffuses, it defocuses, it relaxes into a little bit of multidimensionality. And we all experience this, we typically call it spacing out. You ever been in a meeting or something where you're supposed to be paying attention and you look out the window and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm spacing out, God, what's going on here? And you pull yourself back together. And we classify that as a bad thing, right? But in actuality, that spacing out is letting go of the plot line, the narrative that the conscious mind is obsessing about as being important, and just sort of floating off into some multidimensionality and ambiguity that from the conscious mind's point of view is just garbage. It's a waste of time. There's nothing there. But in actual fact, it's completely the other way around. That's where the juice is. That's where vitality is. That's where the openness is. So anyway, hopefully that'll do it, Peter. And if not, you should be down here and you could argue.
Yeah, I told you to go. That'll teach him.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I'm talking to people, quite often what happened would be like I'm zooming out or something. I don't know. Just instead of talking to this person and the word they were saying, it seems like I pay more attention to there's some kind of energy or flavor or something. Would that be considered kind of derail from the conceptual?
Yes, very much so. I mean, that's what I do in these meetings, for example. I don't interact with people at all from my conscious mind. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I don't even remember what anyone just said. But there's a kind of I'm just sort of with I'm just with the amorphousness of the flavor, and something happens. Words start happening and all this stuff.
And it's especially if I'm in that kind of mood, it's kind of quite joyful.
Oh, sure.
Regardless what kind of topic was going on.
Yeah, sure.
But to just go, sense that flavor or the waving of whatever, I don't know, and it just flows in that kind of thing.
Yeah, because this is what actuality is like. Actuality, it's like like we were talking about and like we're playing with this morning in the meditation. It's like music. It's like this flow of energies. It's like a dance. It's like a, just a sort of like clouds in the sky. I mean, it's just this amazing, infinitely complex patterns of flavors and energies and dancing, doing itself, and yet it's intelligent and participatory, and you were there, and you are it, and you were dancing with it, and the whole thing is just, it's like that. And it really is like that, and it always is like that, and it's possible to function with it like that. The conscious mind is used to claiming, you can't do that, you'll be spaced out, you'll be totally dysfunctional, you'll be a basket case. But it's just bullshitting you. It's trying to keep you in fear to keep its power over you. But in actual fact, you can let go into this, multidimensionality, and your efficiency, in fact, increases. Yeah, yes.
So, in classical yoga, there's one of the sutras is yoga calms the vrittis of your mind.
Right.
And the heart of recognition, I was learning that the mind is just mind, like small mind, is just thinking all the time. It's its job,
Sure.
And for me, all of a sudden I realized that it really wasn't about calming the thought.
No.
It was about kind of diving underneath. I can't describe how I do it, and it might be by looking at something that looks pleasing to me, or staring at my fingernails or whatever. But it's so the mind's still doing this stuff, and it's and then I just kind of drop it below it and let it do what it does. It does it well, it thinks it's doing its job and helping me.
Yeah, exactly. That's very good. See, Patanjali caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
His whole thing of, in the second statement of the Yoga Sutras, it's, yoga is the calming of the vrittis,
Right.
in other words, you're supposed to stop thinking, silence the mind, stifle yourself, stifle yourself, Edith. It's absurd
Right.
because it can't happen and it's not necessary. You don't need to stifle the vrittis. You just notice that the vrittis are a small event in a vast space and there's a whole lot more going on than that. So again,
Right. Like that mansion metaphor.
The personality.
It's like dropping the bottom of the lake, and then
Yeah.
the lake is still.
Yeah, the waves are still there on the top, but
Right.
but you can go down underneath, and all of a sudden you're just in the deep currents, and it's a whole different scene. But it's actually the same thing, and you don't need to stop the waves to go underneath. You just go down.
Right.
You sort of change your focus or change your orientation or whatever. The mind, the conscious thought, all this is exactly like that. Spiritual beginners are always wrestling with their thoughts and trying to stop them. How do you stop thinking? How can I stop my thoughts so I can start meditating? It's like, no, don't worry about it.
Because all people come in and I try to teach them stress management.
Well, sure.
And then they say, oh, I can't meditate. I have too many thoughts. I said, well, that's just going to go on. That's irrelevant. If you have to get to the point where you can, it can be this little schmooze over here that you
Exactly. Because thoughts are a small event in a big space. Experience is like that. Thoughts are a small event in a big space. Find where your thoughts are and look at the whole content of your thought. And just have your mind just ranting and raving like it does. And then go over here, metaphorically speaking. The mind is still going, but that's not mine. A very easy way to do it, the mind is going on, go to your field of vision. There's no thought in your field of vision. There's silent light, just shining, not thought. The thought might be ranting along like crazy in the area, in the bandwidth of mentality, but in the field of vision, there's no thought. Right? Where's the field of sensation? No thought. No matter how much you're thinking and how crazy your mind's going, field of sensation, there's not a thought. Because bandwidth is isolated relatively. They don't impinge on each other. And this is literally true. It's not metaphorically true. It's literally true. And you can discover that it's true by looking at your experience and seeing what it actually is, sort of deconstructing, the way the orientation of it with itself. Look at where's your field of vision? Well, the field of vision is wherever it is. And then, where is your field of sensation? Well, it's not in exactly the same place. It's kind of, if your field of vision is here, then it's kind of here somewhere. Whatever, right? It's not like a literal spatial orientation, but it's in a different place. They don't impinge on each other. They coexist. Just like this room and that room over there coexist. They just don't impinge on each other. They may both be happening at once, but they aren't happening in the same place. And thought's the same. Where's thought? Thought is, up here in the thought, wherever it is, right? It's not actually localized, so, saying where is it, it's sort of metaphorical. But it happens in its own space, in its own dimension. So the dimension of thought is wherever it is, but then where's the dimension of vision? It's in a different place than the dimension of thought. And so, there's no thought in vision. There's no vision in thought. They're separate. Hearing, same thing. What's hearing? Hearing doesn't impinge upon vision. When you hear a sound, it doesn't stop or start the light that's showing up in your eyes, right? And vice versa. It's just, just check it out. You can see for yourself. It's pretty plain to me that this is like that. So it's very easy. So thought takes up a really pretty much a small bandwidth of your experience. If you want to get outside of thought, go somewhere else. Direct your attention to another portion of your experience, and lo and behold, there's no thought there.
But then what happens, of course, is that then our mind, so you're doing, let's say you go into vision, and then you start having thoughts about what you're looking at, it can be kind of tricky to stay in a different...
Well, the trick is, don't go to the concept, stay with the texture.
Okay.
Vision is defined by texture. It's not defined by the word vision. It's not defined by the idea of vision. It's defined by the texture of light.
Okay.
So when you're with the texture of light, it's absolutely distinct from the texture of thought. And textually, you can't confuse them. When the mind tries to, it tries to get confused because it's a Nazi. It wants to take over the world. It wants to own everything, right? So it tries to convince you, it tries to seduce you that, wait a minute, this vision is just mine. But it's lying. It's bullshit, because vision is not mine. Vision is not sound. They're different. They're different textures. And in fact, these textures are clearly and obviously and intuitively differentiable. You don't confuse sound with light. You just don't. Why? Because they're different textures. They're different. They happen in different dimensions, right? Thought the same way. Thought's a different. Thought is a different texture than light, than vision. It just does. You can't explain it, but it's completely experientially self-evident.
I used to have that problem that Michelle was just talking about when I tried to do that with vision. I switched to sound, and it was easier to do it because my thought process didn't as easily co-opt sound as it did vision.
And again,
so I just switched
good point. Everyone's unique, and different people have different strengths and weaknesses in different aspects of their experience, different sense fields, different so on. So, if there's something that trips you up, find something else that doesn't. So there's not a formulaic way of doing this. You have to work with your nature, which is absolutely unique and different than everyone else's nature. So some trick that works for someone else might not work for you at all. But you can find your own analogous trick that will work, that might not work for them.
There's only one place where thought seems to bother me. I mean, I have a place where it can occur, but it doesn't bother me at all, and that's like when I'm on my motor scooter going 55 miles to work, and I think of all the stuff that could happen, and I don't care about it. It's just meaningless to me.
Sure.
It's like, I've been through this before. The thought arises, it's going to say, this could happen, and we go on.
But also, when you're doing that on your bike, you're in an energy engagement which is non-thought oriented.
Yes.
So
it's very intense.
So you're there. That engagement, and again, is direct energy engagement.
Yes.
Remember, I was talking about this earlier. How functioning happens by direct energy engagement. It doesn't happen by thought. Anything you can do well is done unconsciously, energetically. When you walk, you don't walk by thinking about it. You walk by walking.
Yes, there was a lot of faith involved.
And when you drive, you don't drive by thinking about it. I mean, if you ever know a driver who drives by thinking about it,
You're in trouble.
get off the road when they're on the road, because they're going to be a shitty driver. What makes competent driving is just energy participation. You don't think about it, you just know. When it comes to a red light, you don't think, well, let's see, is that light red? Yeah, gosh, I guess it's kind of red, isn't it? Well, gee, I better slow down. Should I stop? Yeah, I guess I should stop. Red light should stop. That's right, I remember. It's not like that, is it? You just know. Red light. It's just a direct energy engagement. And there may or may not be thought concurrently, but the thought is not part of the functioning. And this is always the case. So again, this is what it's about. It's about going to the energy of experience rather than, going to the concept of the experience. And you are always with the energy of the experience because that's what experience actually is. And explicitly, 99% of your experience is non-thought, i.e. direct energy engagement. When you see, everything you see in your field of vision now is not there because you're thinking about it. Right? It's there, and maybe you are thinking about it, but that's after the fact that you're seeing it. You're not seeing it by thinking about it. The seeing is a direct energy engagement. Hearing is direct energy engagement. Feeling is a direct energy engagement, right? And thought is not part of that mechanism. That's not part of that functioning. It just isn't. It may coexist with it, and it may claim to be relevant to it, but it's not actually.
The place where thought seems to be in the way is going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I have tools, techniques I go to. One will be just to listen, like to the fan.
Right.
The other one will be to feel my arms, or I might take a trip through the whole body.
And again, that's an artifact of distraction of attention, because there's relatively lesser stimulation to the other senses when you're going to sleep. The thought seem to be predominantly relatively louder.
Yes.
And you can counter that, as you say, by directing the attention to another energy presence, and all of a sudden, again, you're outside of thought, and so the thought relatively recedes in dominance.
Yes, the other tool I've played with in recent months is allowing images.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I could be like going down a path, or suddenly there could be trees, tree lines, and
Right.
and I don't really quite know what's going to come next. I can kind of
Yeah.
feel for it,
Sure.
but it's fun to have just vision, images instead of thought.
Right.
The next thing you know, it's like I'm down under.
Yeah, you go to you're in the imagining aspect of mind, which again is not a conscious thought process. So again, you're with a different textural functioning, and so again, it's direct energy engagement that is non-thought. I mean, that's how dreams come. Dreams don't emerge logically; they don't emerge consciously as a product of conscious thought. Conscious thought may try to piggyback onto the dream and turn it into some logical narrative. But the actual dreaming itself, of course, is not like that. It's very surprising and spontaneous and vital.
Yes.
Sometimes I would have thought, feel like clumsy, or feel like uncomfortable situation, just by thinking, and then I physically felt it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking there might be a better way to look into this kind of thing instead of looking into the thinking, but go to the energy.
Well, that's always the case.
Okay.
I mean.
So how to see through this, instead of focusing on the thinking process, but
Yeah.
see through the energy aspect.
Well, always, for me, the major trick is always go to texture, go to the texture of experience, because texture is real presence. Even thought has texture. When you go to the texture of thought, all of a sudden you're with thinking, not with the content. You're not with the narration. You're not with, because
But you were saying instead of deal with this, the situation, instead it was deal with the experience instead
Right.
of the situation or something like that. Could you talk more about that? Is that something to do with this?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're referring to exactly. But basically, I was talking about this with some of you or one of you earlier. I don't think we did it in a group like this, but conceptual thought pretends to be about stuff. That's thought's great claim is it's about things. So I'm thinking about this situation. I'm thinking about what we're doing here. I'm thinking about what I'm doing here. I'm thinking about what's going to happen. But it's all a lie. Thought is not about anything. Thought claims to be about, but thought is only about the fact that thought is present. Just like vision is only about the fact that vision is present. Vision is not about something else. Vision is an energy present. Thought is actually an energy present. Thought is like the northern lights. It's a light show in your mind. That's all it is. And yet, through its bizarre nature, it has the ability to create this claim of dominance, this claim of being about, this claim of relevance, this claim of being about things, and that's the creation of the conscious mind, which is a complete fiction. It doesn't actually exist. Again, it's sort of created by kind of a hypnotic mechanism.
I see when you say seeing the texture of the thought,
Uh-huh.
when at night when I close my eyes, I can literally see it.
Sure.
This, this.
It has a texture. It has a very distinct texture.
Light texture and
Sure.
formless form, whatever. But when you during the daytime, when you're having those thinking, those thoughts, it's very hard to go into this texture, so-called
Right.
light texture.
Yeah.
So what other alternative or suggestion you can give?
Well, I would say always go to the texture, but don't worry about thought. Bypass thought. Go to vision, go to sensation, go to some other textual experience. And thought may chase you to try to get you back, but once you go to the texture of something and you get it and really are with it and get a good hit on it, that the actuality of that it becomes dominant and the thought recedes is important. You can't deal with thought on its own terms. You have to bypass it. Thought is insanity. The conscious mind is insane. And all it can do is exercise its maniacal insanity. So you can't meet it on its own terms. You can't argue with thought logically. You just have to, go elsewhere.
Yeah. It happened to me quite often, but by myself, when I feel this mirage is building, the thought, the story start building up, then I see it and just collapse. And this happened very often, just thought. But when I deal with people, when I, in different certain situation, that makes it hard to.
Yeah, because so much of our ordinary interaction with other people is through words and ideas and frameworks of supposedly normal human interaction, which is all thought-based and in complete denial of all the energy exchange that goes on. When you have a job to do and you're dealing with someone about the job and you're talking to them and all this, you're completely ignoring whether you like them or not. You're completely ignoring the energy exchange and all this kind of thing. And that ignoring just basically feeds into the claimed irrelevance that the mind has in the thought, and it takes advantage of that and dominates. But again, you don't have to, and like you say, as you settle more and more into familiarity with the actuality of the multidimensional energy, you learn that you can actually function on that basis very effectively. It doesn't necessarily completely solve the problem of the mind, but it makes it recede in importance.
In certain scenario, if before, if I'm facing that kind of situation, I would get really angry. But now, when I'm facing it, I feel like it was energy, just boom, the energy from whatever, and I just I disregard it.
So it seems like there's an illusion that there's a package of thought, that there's a theme going on. So like it's a train and there's this first car that comes along and it has this theme to it, and there's supposedly a second car, but I'm thinking the illusion here is that they're all connected.
Yeah, for sure, exactly.
Okay.
Thought claims to be logical, claims to be connected, claims to be about something, and it's all bullshit. It bootstraps itself up into existence by its own bravado.
Yeah, there is a saying that the second thought is never connected to the first thought.
Of course not.
We just feel like it's connected.
Yeah, it creates the sense of being connected, and I'm thinking this, and it all makes sense, and it's all logical. It's like, yeah, right. Thought is completely insane and completely disconnected from actuality. It's a simple fact, the conscious mind is insane. The conscious mind is delusion, and but it's not that important because it's small and you are big.
And we're operating anyway.
Radiance
is doing its thing
Yes,
anyway.
because all of your functioning is actually direct energy engagement. Even though thought is claiming that that's not the case, and maybe even successfully convincing the conscious mind it's not the case, in actual fact, all of your functioning is direct energy engagement, which has nothing to do with thought. So it's like you're out of jail and your head is busy telling you you're in jail, or vice versa. It's like, it's completely schizophrenic. It's really hard to emphasize how true it is that the conscious mind is insane. The conscious mind is insane. It's just a given. It pretends to be sane. It pretends to be rational. It's very reasonable. It can work out logic. It can defend itself. It can make arguments and all that. And it's all bullshit. Every bit of it. Because what gives the conscious mind power is intelligence, and intelligence is not the conscious mind. Intelligence is not thought. Intelligence is not a product of thought. Intelligence is the nature of the energy. The mind borrows its intelligence from the energy. The mind isn't churning out intelligence by logic. It's a complete, it claims to be autonomous and to be smart and to be this and that. It's all borrowed. It's all bullshit.
And it'll never be quiet per se.
No, of
It'll
course
just
not.
drop maybe more into the background and
Yeah,
be considered less.
It recedes in importance. It recedes in urgency. It recedes in relevance relatively. But it's not important. It's certainly not as important as it claims to be. And you notice that fact when you begin to appreciate the actual dimensions of the energy, the actual energy presence that your experience consists of and your functioning consists of. Because there's all of these vast fields of energy, and thought is just one of them, and it's not a particularly big one of them.
And it's always been this way. It's like...
Yeah, but we don't notice it.
Yeah.
Because we go crazy because our thoughts drive us nuts, and then once the thoughts have successfully driven us nuts, they've taken over, and to the extent that even though we're in this vast non-thought energy field directly engaged with it, we don't let ourselves notice that fact. And that creates the apparent split between conscious mind and unconscious mind. So the unconscious mind has always been completely engaged with the transcendental energy, with pure intelligence and with no thought. Right? But the conscious mind doesn't know that. And the unconscious mind knows about the conscious mind, but it doesn't really care because it doesn't speak that language. So then you get this split, and then the persona identifies with the conscious mind, right? Even though the conscious mind is just a tiny little piece, a tiny little sliver of this vast energy system that you actually are. But the conscious mind can't realize that. I mean, this is all about, the boundary between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. True spirituality is about the discovery of the actuality of what can be called, and again, this is pop psychological terms. I don't know true psychology at all. When I say conscious mind and unconscious mind, I'm just talking about, common, consensus reality bullshit, pop psychology. But there is this phenomenon of a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, and you are both of them. And they aren't antagonistic, but they don't understand each other at all. The conscious mind doesn't know the unconscious mind even exists. And the unconscious mind doesn't give a shit that the conscious mind exists. But it's possible to consciously discover the unconscious mind. The conscious mind can't do it per se, but the attention can, because attention is not a byproduct of the conscious mind. And so that's like the kind of exercises we do, like the experiments in the meditation and things like that, where you do things that are essentially illogical. The conscious mind can't wrap its head around what we were doing in the meditation this morning. It would say, we're just sitting here. What's the point, right? But experientially, it's not simply that, is it? There's more going on, and that more, the unconscious mind can totally be with that because that's its mode. It's like, I'm off and running. This is cool. But you can become aware of it by letting yourself be with it irrationally. I mean, listen to the music of experience. What does that mean? Your conscious mind says, what bullshit? What kind of, pull the other one. What kind of drivel is this guy spouting? But the unconscious mind goes, yeah, okay, cool. Because it doesn't give a shit about logic or making sense or anything. It's just like, okay, I'll do that, sure. and because the unconscious mind can do it, then you're there doing it, and the conscious mind is maybe busy trying to deny it or distract you, but it can't deny that something's happening. So you can awaken to, noticing is basically a euphemism for being with your experience in the mode of the unconscious mind, as opposed to the mode of the conscious mind.
It almost sounds like, in a sense, with more intelligence available, being a child.
Very much so. Children have, depending on the phase of their development, have a much less developed conscious mind, and originally, as a newborn, it's all unconscious, and the conscious mind is fabricated on top of that. And so, you've of course all heard the famous quote, supposedly of Jesus, unless you become like little children, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about very specifically, very precisely, this phenomenon, that it is the primal multidimensional energy engagement that is liberated, that is transcendental, that is heaven. Heaven is a euphemism for transcendence. And this is that intrinsically, but you can't go there. You can't go there as a conscious mind. The conscious mind can't go to heaven. You can't do it. It doesn't compute. It's going to argue about it forever. But the unconscious mind is already in heaven. And so the degree to which you can tune into the mode of the unconscious mind, which is very real and which you already are. So it's totally doable, even though the conscious mind can't figure out how to do it. But you can do it anyway, because you're more than the conscious mind. And so by discovering this and letting yourself consciously experience these unconscious modes, you enter the kingdom of heaven, i.e., the infinite radiance.
I love this direct energy engagement.
Sure. Well, look at it.
I've never heard that before.
Well, look at it. Here you are sitting like you're talking and you're waving. How do you wave your hands around? You're not waving your hands around by thinking about it. You're not thinking like, well, let me see, I'm going to wave my hand around now, so I have to contract this muscle and move this finger. It's not like that, is it? You just do it. You're walking. How do you walk? You can't possibly think how to walk. You can't describe how to walk. You just do it. Or driving a car. Anything you can do well. And even things you may think of as being conscious, like having a conversation, is actually direct energy engagement. If the conscious mind had to stop and think about what I'm saying, and then stop and think about what to say back, it would take 10 minutes to come up with a sentence, right? But it's not like that. I can just say something, and you can say something, and I can say something, and it's very interesting and intelligent, right? And so it's just a matter of noticing that, of tuning into that, and go, wow, yeah, this is really interesting. There's something interesting going on here that has absolutely nothing to do with thought. It has absolutely nothing to do with having an idea about what's going on. You just do it anyway. You do it by doing it, not by knowing how to do it as an idea.
It's so much more free and powerful.
It's powerful, it's vital, it's the life force. The mode of the life force, which is what you are, which is your juice, which is your energy, which is your motivation, which is your essence, is direct energy engagement. It's radiant, it just shines forth. Right? It's palpable. It's completely obvious that it is that way.
The intelligence is what gives it the possibility of being seeming, right?
Being what?
The intelligence is what gives it the power to seem like anything.
Yes, exactly.
So the intelligence is not a seeming.
Right. Intelligence is real. Intelligence is as real as it gets.
The interaction of the intelligence is not a seeming.
Right, absolutely.
So today when I said, is the puppeteer a seeming? And you said yes, it contradicts when I said yesterday.
Oh, okay, yeah.
When I said yesterday, the big me, like I feel like the real me, whatever is doing this whole thing, is actually doing exactly what I want to do.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a seeming.
Right.
That's what's controlling the seeming.
Yeah, it's not a seeming. When I was talking about the puppeteer being a seeming, I mean a puppeteer, as a thing from a puppet. All of that is not really like that. So in that sense, that's a seeming. But what the puppeteer really is, what's doing all this, the real you, is definitely not a seeming.
It's what
makes
everything seem whatever like it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's doing the seeming. But it's not a product of the seeming. It's what's doing everything. It's what you really are. It's what this really is.
Sometimes we say, all we have is seeming, but that's not true. All we have is intelligence, which can seem like anything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it shows up as infinite seeming. So to say it's all we have is seeming is not literally true, but you don't have the intelligence except as a seeming in a way. It's there, and you can know that you are it, But as soon as you try to go to it, you're just going to end up with a seeming. And it endlessly generates infinite seemings. And the seemings are real. They're real seemings. The seemings are like sparks flying off from a sparkler. So when you go towards a sparkler, what do you get? You just like, all these sparks. And where's the sparkler? I can't see it. There's all these sparks. And that's what, if you try to go to the intelligence, you're never going to find the intelligence. But the intelligence is really obvious because its evidence is everywhere in all these seemings.
And that's the balance.
Yes, exactly. But to try and is it this, is it that, to try and like split these hairs is sort of irrelevant. It's not like that.
I keep on wanting to ask this question, but it just
it's good.
It's keeps on happening. So
yeah, no, it's all good.
Like who gives a shit, really?
Yeah, really.
Okay, I feel better now. I'm definitely all set now. There we go. See you next year. Come up with another question.
Same question, a different guy.
Every year I come and ask the same question for like 10 years in a row.
Well, you're persistent, that's laudable. You're like a dog with a bone, it's like...
Okay, Bruce, you're right.
Whatever you say, boss. Been nice knowing you. Good luck with that one.
You know it all now. Just on a funny note, when I leave nightclubs at night, sometimes 2 or 3 times I've had a cop follow me. I noticed it.
Right.
When I do that, I immediately, I haven't been drinking, but I just don't feel like getting pulled over. So I immediately start looking at the lines.
Right.
And I get pulled over. Because
right.
You look like you've been drinking.
Right. You're driving too carefully.
Yeah, we were talking about, trying to drive,
Yeah, cops do that, You go on the highway and look for the guy that's in the right lane driving slow. Oh, he's a drunk.
Yeah.
Because he's busy pretending not to be drunk. The guy that's racing along the left lane doesn't give a shit. He's not drunk. So funny.
I just tell him I'm a shitty driver.
Yeah, right. And he goes, yeah, you are.
Exactly. Like, oh my God, I just hit the line.
I mean, all this stuff that we're dealing with, that the whole focus of this retreat is very, very weird, because what we're dealing with can't be talked about. What we're dealing with doesn't make any sense, and yet we're using words, and the conscious mind is here, and we're asking questions, and we're answering questions, and all this, and yet at the same time, all this other stuff's going on, which doesn't really click with that, but they coexist. So the whole thing is confusing and kind of a mess. But that's the nature of it, because it's like that, because energy comes along with this crazy human consciousness, this crazy human mind that bothers up the works, and they always coexist. So in any kind of exchange, there's these two levels going on, and they coexist, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. They don't correlate. So so there's in a normal conscious exchange, like if I was giving an address, talking about a topic, and you were assimilating the topic and taking notes and asking questions about it, and I was answering the questions, and it was all kind of above board, that can have a seeming coherence. But what we're actually doing here is dealing with something that can't be talked about, subtle energy, multidimensionality, and so on and so forth, and yet there's a lot of talking going on. So it's kind of, there's a mismatch and a jarring and an inconsistency in that, if you're trying to make it make sense. And so that's the nature of the beast. So part of what this whole enterprise is essentially disjointed, but it's disjointed intentionally, because in the disjointedness you get the cracks, you get the and then you can sort of slip in between, metaphorically speaking.
Peter, you need a reality isolation transform, an impedance mismatch.
I like it, yeah.
Okay.
But you get that by sufficient befuddlement.
Oh,
You say enough gibberish with great conviction and a seemingly logical presentation, it does the trick. You're sitting there going, what? It's like, whoa! And then that whoa is like, that's when the magic can happen. It just makes a lot of sense. Wait a minute, what did you just say?
I find that fundamentally the interest shifts from the beliefs and the thoughts to something else.
Yeah.
It's like you just lose interest in that, you don't buy it
Right.
anymore, and then it shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, it becomes less relevant, and your whole emphasis becomes something else that's much more real and juicy and nonlinear and present, but you can't talk about it and you can't think about it. It's not a conscious focus. It's not a focus that can be specified or put into words. It's just this.
Yeah, but it's like fundamentally, you're not like interested in figuring it out
Right,
anymore.
yeah.
You don't have to finish that thought. You don't have to finish
Right.
that problem.
Right.
And that's when it like shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. When the center of gravity shifts from a conscious orientation to an unconscious orientation, then you're just dancing with it. Which makes no sense, but you can do it. And it's real, and that's what it is juicy. As opposed to conscious thought, which is completely boring and non-juicy. But it's very logical and makes a lot of sense.
And as long as you don't believe it anymore, it's...
Yeah, belief is but the pebble that we trip over. When you get that all thought, all logic, all concepts is just hypothesis, then it's very simple. But when you believe the hypothesis and transfer the hypothesis to the assumption that it's objectively true, then you're fucked. That's when you're believing thoughts instead of just entertaining them as interesting hypothetical possibilities.
But that happens spontaneously too. It's like...
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like I wanted to not believe thoughts for a very long time,
Oh, yeah.
and then it just happens spontaneously.
Yeah, you can't do it by
Yeah.
by trying.
Yeah.
You find it, you stumble onto it. Again, the center of gravity shifts.
Conscious thought can be very addictive.
Yeah, it's like a junk peddler. Here, try one of these. You'll like it.
The thing is, but the peddling words and stuff like that, it caters to the whole how to and controlling orientation.
Sure.
And what you're talking about is not,
No, it's not in that mode at all.
Yeah, and when I try to use it that way, it's just really talk about feeling shitty. When actually it's more about losing. It's like all out of the realm, and it's not even the issue of control. It's
Again, it's participation, which is not controlling so much as dancing with. I mean that's obviously very euphemistic, but it's more like a spontaneous participatory art form than a controlled system of executing your will.
Yeah. You try to talk around the whole how-to orientation. That's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I expect you all are getting pretty toasted by now, spinning around all this stuff. Yeah.
There's been a request from some people, or imaginary cyber people, that you, the playing that you broadcasted.
Okay, well, we'll leave the broadcast now. Which brings me to announce that I have been requested by several people that they'd enjoy hearing me play this Indian instrument I've been learning called the sarangi. So after this meeting, which is basically right now, I'll be playing it a little bit, and if you'd enjoy sticking around, hanging out, and listening, you're more than welcome to.
Is that possible? Broadcasting?
Yeah.